I will now call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of Texas Southmost College District. Trustees present tonight are Mr. Rene Torres, Dr. Robert Lozano, Mr. Trey Mendez. We're also expecting Mr. David Oliveira to come, and Dr. Robles has said he won't be able to make it, and neither will Ms. Adela Garza. Also present is Dr. Lily Tercero, President of Texas Southmost College. Announcements, I call on Dr. Tercero to make the announcements.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'm really pleased to let you know that I think it was last week, Mrs. Garza and myself were both selected to be principal of the day. Mrs. Garza was over at Hanna High School, and I was over at Vestedo Middle School. And I have to tell you that it was a wonderful experience. I spent a lot of time interacting with the kids there and talking about going to school and coming to TSC. And they'll be coming to TSC. There's no question about the middle school students. They'll be coming to TSC. So it was a wonderful experience. Mrs. Garza had the same opportunity. She had an opportunity to share her experience at the luncheon that was held that day. And she thought she had a wonderful time too. So just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item would be public comments. Max, do we have anybody sign up? Nobody signed up for comment. Public comments. Mission statement. Texas Southmost College is a comprehensive, open admissions public community college whose mission comports with state statute subchapter A, section 130. Texas Southmost College offers programs leading to certificates of completion and associate's degree, developmental education, to prepare students for college-level work, occupational and technical programs to prepare students for immediate employment, academic courses of study to develop the core skills, understanding, and knowledge appropriate for baccalaureate programs, and continued education, counseling, guidance, adult literacy, and personal enrichment. Texas Southmost College advances economic and social development, enhances the quality of life, encourages respect for the environment, cultivates personal enrichment, and expands knowledge in service to its community. It convenes the cultures of its community and fosters an appreciation of the unique heritage of the lower Rio Grande Valley. It provides academic leadership in intellectual, social, cultural, and economic life of the region it serves. Texas Southmost College places excellence in teaching and learning at the core of its commitment. It seeks to help students at all levels of development, develop the skills which will sustain lifelong learning while respecting the dignity of each learner and the needs of the entire community. We start with item number 5, consideration and approval of the minutes of the meeting of January 19th, 2012.
So moved.
I've got a motion by Mr. Mendez, a second by Mr. Torres. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion is approved. Item number 6, consideration and approval of resolution granting certain tax exemptions for certain historic sites under the 2012 Heritage Plan. I call on Mr. Joe Gavito, from the City of Brownsville, to present the item. Hello, Mr. Gavito. Welcome.
President, Chair, members of the board. My name is Joe Gavito. I'm the Heritage Officer for the City of Brownsville. This is the 24th year that this Heritage Plan has been presented before this board. 5 taxing entities have participated in this program for 25 years. The city is the lead agency. The county, the port, the university, the school district, and which one is left out?
All the ones I can remember.
Navigation District, yeah. Those are the 5 taxing entities. The 5 taxing entities have participated in joint effort for historic preservation. And one of the things that I need to present to you are the changes for this year. And there are 10 additional sites that have been added to the plan. 9 of them are primary local sites that receive 50% historic tax exemption. There is 1 that has received the state designation and will receive 100%. I take a snapshot of what happened last year because everything's a variable. You have rates and you have your different property values change. But last year you participated in this program and you're at the taxes that were foregone for your institution were $9,170. And so I can predict that it'll be a little higher next year, but not much more than that. Are there any questions?
Any questions? I'm looking for a motion then for consideration and possible action, so I'm looking for a motion to adopt the resolution granting certain tax exemptions to certain historical sites under the 2012 historical plan as presented.
So moved.
I got a motion by Dr. Lozano. Do I have a second? A second by Mr. Torres. Any discussion?
Chairman, I have to abstain from the vote. I have 4 properties on here. So.
We have an abstention from Mr. Mendez. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, consideration and approval of acceptance of works of art. I call on Mr. Ramiro Gonzalez, City of Brownsville, to present the item.
Good evening, trustees. This is a project that we've been working on for a couple months, and it's basically a public art project. If you've driven by the Museum of Fine Arts, you've seen them outside and all along Linear Park. We identified one sculpture in particular that we felt was a very positive addition to the campus. And if you see on page, I think you guys have this in your packet.
It's tab 3 in your work.
If you don't have color images, color copies, I brought color copies. But page 3, there's one in the form of a scorpion. We thought it was, obviously the obvious, and we thought we could locate it here. One here, and we also identified another potential site over at ITech, right in front of the main entrance. We think a sculpture would look nice there. These are going to only be here for about a year and a half. So that is, that's what the project is. Hopefully, we will keep this kind of revolving public art exhibit coming to Brownsville. Not necessarily this one, but others. So hopefully, this is the first of many.
So you're looking for us to approve the acceptance of it's a loan of the art. Is that correct?
No, well, the reason we're here is the trustees have to approve the actual location of the sculpture.
There is a policy in
there is a
place,
policy.
Mr. Chair, that the Board of Trustees, approve any potential art pieces or sculptures as, gifts for, even if it's for a year,
Yeah.
to
But
place them.
To clarify, it's not a gift. This is a loan, correct?
It's a loan, yes. we do not own these pieces, so we
If not,
cannot
we'll put
give
our
them.
inventory sticker on, and then we have issues later.
That's right.
Mr. Chairman, I did ask Mr. Gonzalez to speak a little bit about the issues that we might need to address in regard to insurance, any potential damage to the pieces, what is the responsibility of TSC in those areas, and any other issues that he thinks we might need to look at.
These are insured by the museum. The museum has a policy on it for the year that it's here. So really, it's just about location, and I mean, if a security guard sees someone scratching it or whatever, you might want to tell them to shoo away or whatnot. But other than that, the pieces are insured against any damage or graffiti. But they've been out at Linear Park for about 2 weeks, and no damage whatsoever. So.
And I don't think anybody can run away with them.
No. I mean, if you see the weight, these are over 600-700 pounds. Some are 1,000 pounds. So no, they can't run. Definitely not run away with them.
So is there an indemnity clause there for the college in case there was an issue that they?
I mean, we could do that if that's necessary.
Mr. Mendez, do we need that?
Well, being that there's a
insurance
policy, I
expert.
think the only issue we want to make sure is that there's coverage for loss or theft away from the museum,
Okay.
actual museum property, because sometimes some policies have clauses that it covers theft and damage to items away from the premises.
Okay.
So you may just want to check the policy to make sure that at least our premises is listed as an additional insured on the policy. Other than that, I think we're okay.
And you're not asking us to sign any agreement or anything?
No.
There's
Just-
nothing.
We had thought of the 2 locations being one right in front of ITech, and 2, one right outside of here, right by the Arts Center. we like them to be in visible places. So that's the 2 locations that we're asking you to approve today.
So looking for a motion to accept the artworks as presented. Do I have a motion?
moved.
Are we going to decide later where the location is going to be here on campus? Is it an exact location where it's going to be on campus?
No, I believe they're already proposing the location.
That's what they're proposing, it's in here.
The proposed location is right here, right in front of the Arts Center, right kind of next to the commander's quarters, in that little green area there. If you guys have another, if you have another location, we're more than willing to consider. But we figured that was the more visible one, given the Arts Center and everything, other events that go on there.
So I have a motion by Mr.
Yeah,
Oliveira.
my motion is to accept them and place them where they recommended.
So I have a motion by Mr. Oliveira to accept them and place them where they recommend. Do I have a second?
I'll go ahead and second.
I have a second by Mr. Mendez. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Ramiro, do you know which other sculpture we're going to be receiving, or is that up to us, or is that up to the city?
The museum actually got a letter from, Mr. Bernard at the Arts Center, and he actually wanted the one on page 4, the first one on page 4,
Capricorn?
the Capricorn.
Actually, that would have been my choice.
Okay, so he suggested that one, and I think that'll probably be it.
So I have a motion by Mr. Oliveira, a second by Mr. Mendez. All in favor? Aye. Motion is approved. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Next item, consideration and approval of the notice of order of election. I call on Mr. Chet Lewis, Vice President of Administration and Finance, to present the item.
One of the chairman and members of the Board of Trustees, one of the requirements for an election is that we have to publish the notification of that election and announce where our early voting locations are going to be, and also announce where the polling places will be on the day of the election, which is May 12th. Currently, we are still moving forward with the election. We've been talking with the Navigation District, and they're moving forward with their election, and we're working out agreements to share costs with them. But at this time, all this item is the approval of the motion to announce the election. And I'm here to answer any questions.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Torres. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Mendez. Any discussion? I've got a question on the times. We've got Los Fresnos has different poll times.
Yes, they do. There's a possibility that we may be able to share costs with Los Fresnos and the Navigation District and ourselves, and their election, because it's a city election, has to have a longer period of time of open hours, and so I think it would cause voter confusion if we shut ours down early, so we've extended that so we can do that cost sharing with them.
So I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved. Item number 10, report on grants. I call on Mr. Irv Downing to, I'm sorry, I forgot. Thank you, sir. And also, I'd like to recognize that Mr. Oliveira is now present. We were informed that you were running late, but thank you for coming, Mr. Oliveira.
I don't know whether Dr. Lozano told you, but Dr. Robles has a child who's ill at home, and so he's unable to attend.
We didn't know. Thank you for informing us. Item number 9, consideration or approval of budget amendments for fiscal year 2012. Mr. Lewis.
This is a budget amendment to recognize some of the activities that have happened during the current fiscal year. Probably the largest one that we're doing the adjustment for is the sale of the Cueto building, which we sold for $500,000. Our net proceeds were $496,572. So we are recognizing that revenue within the facilities budget and then offsetting the transfer that we would have done from the general fund into the facilities fund to recognize that money into the general fund. We also have a $10,300 increase in the general institution account, and that's primarily due to the United Way membership. When we paid the membership for last year, we actually did it in the current fiscal year because we had a delay in the payment. So we're just recognizing something that would have incurred in the last budget year, but we didn't have the PO issued at the time.
You said United Way. You mean United Brownsville?
I'm sorry, United Brownsville. Thank you. Thank you. We have a transfer to where we created a new account. We're very happy to have Dr. Oweto here, so we moved his salary into his own cost center so we can start keeping track of him. And then we have a small amount to recognize the fact that we have an amount that we have to pay for some taxes on a piece of property that was sold, that was purchased off the Jackson. So I think that's a small amount of $116. I'm here to answer any questions and also seek approval for the budget amendment.
So do I have a motion to approve the budget amendment?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Torres, second by Dr. Lozano. Any discussion? I just got a question, I guess, to understand it completely. The parentheses on the Cueto building, you're removing it from inventory? Is that basically what's happening, and then adding the funds?
Actually, there is another adjustment that will happen in relation to removing it from the inventory, but that's not being accounted here. We're primarily looking at revenues and expenditures. So if you look at item 3 on the second grouping, this indicates the sale of the property. The first one is the amount of revenue that we're recognizing within the facility fund, and then we are reducing the transfer, and so that the net gain to the facility fund is no effect. And then that transfer, if you go up a couple lines to that first grouping, you'll see the reduction in the transfer from the general fund, and therefore it increases the overall available funds in the general fund. But yes, we will remove that item from our inventory for this fiscal year.
Now, is that our decision to have it in the general fund, or is that usually the way it works when you do a sale of that, or can we?
We could have done it in either direction. However, the fact that we're going to have a number of startup costs that are coming up in the current fiscal year, the general fund seemed to make more sense as a good parking place to put those funds. If you so desire to increase the amount in the facilities fund, we could do it that way. But at this point, I think we have more options if we do it, park it in the general fund.
Dr. Tercero, that's your recommendation?
I agree, yes, sir. I agree.
Okay, thank you. So then we have the motion to approve the budget amendments number 12-002 for fiscal year 2012 as presented. I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. Item number 10, report on grants. I call on Mr. Irv Downing to provide the summary of information on grants. Mr. Downing?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, President Tesoro, board members. I think in your packets you have an overview of grants that are particularly related to Texas Southmost College. I think we saw evidence of that. One of those grants last week in the Skills Development Fund that we were able to attend the opening on. That particular process we'd been working with Carling Technologies for a little over a year in really trying to work with them on identifying what their skills training needs were. They had different ideas what they wanted to do. They also had different demands based on business demands, and so there's a little bit of certainly there's a lot of partnership with them in the skills development grants that are out there. It was interesting to us. Then Texas Workforce Commission, of course, enters the whole discussion and about how much funds they have for this region of the world to talk about. So that process, that was a faster process for us, frankly, than other companies we've dealt with. One of the other ones that's identified there is a grant potential that we expect to have into the Texas Workforce Commission within the week is the one for Trico Technologies. Trico Technologies, that process with them has taken a little over 2 years to go through. It's 2 years because they are predominantly an automotive supplier. So in the past 2 years, if you think of the ups and downs in the automotive industry, they provide windshield wiper blades and systems that go into those products. So they've been up and down. It looks as if we've got a good agreement from them and a good agreement with the Workforce Commission. So as we talked about at the Carling Technologies program, that's one that we expect to have for them very soon, and I'm hoping that we'll get favorable response from the Workforce Commission at that time. That's an example of the kind of grants that we really work through Carling, for example, once we get that underway, we'll administer all the training from continuing education. We'll do all the bookkeeping essentially on that with the Texas Workforce Commission. And the Workforce Commission, under that grant, which is a little over $100,000, allows us about $11,000 to do those activities. So there's not a whole lot in administration on the workforce grants that are out there. I think some other grants that are in the reports you'll also be informed of that and you're aware of in the context of the solar and wind systems that will be installed shortly. The solar system, which is on the rec center, we are told that it should be operational by midweek next week. And so we'll have some solar power being generated out of there. We need the utilities board to make a hookup on that system. Next Monday, we should begin construction of the wind generator, of the wind tower. That's had a number of construction issues that have been related to how we anchor the thing, because it's a very, very tall structure. And so we've got that worked out. The funds are there. We expect that project to be done by the end of April. It needs to be done. The system will be utilized in the instruction, in technology instruction. So we'll have a website that'll tell us how much power is being generated. We'll be able to use that in the technical instruction that TSC has as we train people in renewable energy. So that process, that grant was awarded to us in 2009. So it's going to be 2012 when we're operational in that program, but it will be operational. I don't know if there are any other grants that you have out there that are of particular interest to you in this.
Well, my question would be on taking advantage of the federal TRIO program. Are we doing any of that for Texas Southmost College?
On the federal TRIO program?
The TRIO grants.
And is that, I'm not, if it's a Department of Labor grant, we certainly look at all those grants, but if...
This is Department of Education, I believe. And also, the other one, I was up in Washington and
Sure.
had a meeting with Representative Hinojosa, who used to be chairman of the Education Committee, and he was telling us that we should look into those, and also the Title V ones, where Title V is for Hispanic serving institutions. So my question would be if we've looked into any of those.
And I know that those are not on the list that I have access here. We certainly do a level of Title V with respect to the partnership on those sorts of things.
I would think that maybe, Mr. Downey, we can maybe look into that and see if there's a possibility of us moving forward with some grants that might be available in the TRIO program.
Okay.
And as well in the Title V grants.
Oh, okay, great, super.
Mr. Villarreal?
Chairman, President Tercero, we do participate with the TRIO programs. We have the Upward Bound Talent Search, the Upward Bound Classic, the Veterans Upward Bound program, and they do target different areas, Cameron County and Rio Hondo, and different parts of our district, and so they are part of the UTB and TSC programs that we do offer.
Going forward, are we going to have to differentiate that from the institutions with the
Yes,
separation? But at this point, do you know the department's working on that?
I believe that they just worked on a renewal, but they're working on the renewal as it stands as a partnership. But that's as much as I know. It does fall under Dr. Hilda Silva, under Student Affairs. So I would suggest and encourage that you might want to consult or send her an email.
Thank you, sir.
Excuse me.
I guess, Dr. Tercero, we could look into that.
Absolutely.
That'd be very...
We'll certainly look into that and start looking forward to the things that we need to do as separate entities once we get the partnership terminated.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any further questions from Mr. Downey?
You don't need to invent the wheel. I think you can look at what STC's doing also, what they're getting, and we can apply for the same ones. I mean,
Yeah,
That'd be
there-
formative, yeah, so.
You know, Mr. Ovadia, there's also a lot of new ones that are coming down the pipeline through Barack Obama's administration's efforts, and we're, actually, I talked with Michael a couple of weeks ago about us moving forward and working with the grants department to start pursuing and looking into some of those, so we'll be looking at that as well with your staff, whoever staff you need to work with.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
No further questions?
I just have one. On the one that was denied, did they give any feedback as to why it was denied or any recommendations for future grants in that same area? Did they state anything?
Yeah, the skills development grant that was denied, you know, they felt that in this case it was a consortia that we had worked with at Padre Island and in Port Isabel, and it was really to develop more of that type of industry that's out in that area, the hospitality industry. We worked both with the consortia and again with the Workforce Commission. When it came down to approval, they felt that overall it was not a target that they wanted to support with skills development funds. And that's a dilemma for us because that's a significant economic generator in TSC's district. And I know we were all very disappointed by that because, again, it takes quite a while to work through these things, especially on a consortia basis. When you're dealing with a single company, you're approaching a single company, probably the HR people as well as the manager with the transaction. When you're dealing with a consortia, that means you've got maybe 5 or 10 businesses. They all have to come to some kind of an agreement, what training will work for all of them, and then put it together. In this case, it was a Workforce Commission decision not to go in that direction given the industry that they wanted to support. They're very, very interested in technical industries. They're very interested in what you guys saw at Carling Switch, what you see at Trico Technologies. They really want to support those kind of more advanced manufacturing sorts of training exercises. The other sorts of things, the customer service that we know is necessary to enhance in a tourist industry, they're not as open to. And that's a challenge for us.
Now, on these that are specifically customized training for certain businesses, do the businesses actually reach out to the college and decide to go at it together, or does the college reach out to these industries and decide that?
We call on industries. We call as part of, in a couple of ways. We have relationships with industries that have been over the years where we've worked with them before. We've worked with Trico Technologies before. We call on them from continuing education. But the other side of it is really an innovative program that the Brownsville Economic Development Council initiated about 3 years ago. And it's called the Business Retention and Expansion Program. So what they do is they call on industry throughout the Brownsville area, and they talk with them about what they need, whether it's a street light, a hole in the, a sidewalk, whether it's, access to something. I would say probably 75% of what those companies ask us about is about training. And so that's a key contact for us. We're a member of that group, and so we get an awful lot of referrals that way. Then we call on those folks and try to develop a proposal out of that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Downing. Item number 11, report on changes to the student financial assistance programs, including federal financial aid and Pell Grants. I call on Mr. Rene Villarreal, Associate Vice President of Enrollment Management, to present this item. Mr. Villarreal, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Madam President, members of the board, within the last 12 to 18 months, we lost our Director of Financial Aid, Marisela Chapa, who retired. During the last 6 months, we've hired a new member of our team, and Mrs. Mary Camarota will be doing a presentation for you on an update for student aid. She comes from the University of Houston downtown, and/or other branches of the University of Houston. I didn't want to necessarily quote her on that last location. But she comes with over 20 years of experience. And at this point, let me introduce her.
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Dr. Teixeira, Chairman. Actually, I spent the last 9 years of my career at the university, in the University of Houston system. I worked at downtown, and I worked in Clear Lake, and I also spent some time working at main campus. So it's very diverse. I've covered open enrollment and selective schools, and large and small, but they're all state. I was asked to put together a presentation just to address some of the most recent changes in federal regulation affecting student financial aid. And so I have a PowerPoint presentation. And do you want me to press a button? Oh, there we go. That was, thank you very much. There you go. My presentation on changes to federal financial aid regulations. Today we're going to talk about changes to satisfactory academic progress, repeated coursework, gainful employment. We're going to discuss upcoming changes in Pell Grant duration of eligibility, the ability to benefit clause, some impacts, changes due to budgets on direct lending, and we'll discuss our current default rates for our institution. For satisfactory academic progress, these regulations were in effect as a result of the Program Integrity Act, effective July 1st of 2011. The first time that we here on this campus implemented these changes was for the conclusion of fall semester 2011. There are three components for financial aid satisfactory academic progress. The first is the GPA. You have to have a cumulative GPA of 2.0. You need to have a completion ratio of 70%, which means that's the ratio between the number of credit hours you attempt versus the number of credit hours that you complete. And there is a maximum time frame eligibility cap where a student can only qualify for aid in attempting 150% of the credit hours needed to complete the plan of study that that student is enrolled in. Federal regulations went so far as to enact national standards for terminology use for financial aid satisfactory academic progress. These are the categories. And this is the terminology that needs to be used. Any student who is meeting SAP is considered to be in good standing. Any student who falls below the standards will be given a grace period of a warning semester. And what we do is we send an email to the student and we say, you have 1 semester to bring yourself back into good standing, or you will go into financial aid suspension. Suspension is exactly what it says. It says you do not qualify based on your academic progress to continue to receive Title IV funds. Students can appeal their suspension by submitting an application to the financial aid office. If that appeal is approved, they will be put into a status of probation. In order for them to be in probation, certain criteria has to be met. And one is that the student must agree to sign an academic plan. In the academic plan, we request that the student maintain a 2.5 GPA for that term of probation and complete 100% of the credits that they attempt. If the student continues and meets that plan, they will have another semester of probation. And they can continue in probation in that status until they return to good standing. And then the cycle can repeat. What happens now is the federal regulations state that for any program that is less than 1 full calendar year in length, calculations for satisfactory academic progress need to be completed on all enrollees, regardless of whether they receive Title IV funds for that semester or not. So because of our standards and our certifications, because we have programs of study that are less than 1 full year in length, we now calculate SAP at the conclusion of each one of our payment periods. So we now have fall, spring, and a summer SAP calculation. The summer SAP calculation is new. In the past, we've done just fall and spring. By doing it this way, we are allowed, by following a calculation schedule at the conclusion of each payment period, we're allowed to offer the warning semester of eligibility to the students. The calculation itself has also changed, where any transfer credit hours that is accepted toward the degree that the student is working on must be included as attempted hours in the calculation for completion ratio. In the past, an institution could choose not to include those credit hours. In addition, we can take English as a second language developmental hours that a student attempts and exclude them from the maximum time frame calculation. In the event the student is in suspension, they're eligible to submit an appeal in certain case scenarios. An appeal can be submitted for any extenuating circumstances. Once we receive the appeal in the office, it is all reviewed by a financial aid committee, not by a single individual. There is no forgiveness clause built into the new satisfactory academic progress requirements for prior academic work. Every credit hour that you take and attempt has to be included if it's transcripted on the student's transcript. Even though a student may qualify for Fresh Start academically, financial aid is still required to count those towards Title IV eligibility. Once the appeal is approved, the student will assign an academic agreement with the financial aid office. And as long as they continue to meet the terms of their agreement, they will stay in probationary status unless they bring themselves back into good standing on a cumulative basis. If the student fails to meet that academic agreement, they will return to suspension status with no option of appealing a second time on that same appeal. So now we move to repeated coursework. That's the conclusion of the SAP. For repeated coursework criteria, this was also a part of the Program Integrity Act that was passed July 1st of 2011. What this criteria says is that credit hours for coursework that's attempted and completed for the third time must be excluded for payment in the enrollment status for that semester, which basically says the third time you're repeating a course that you have passed previously, we cannot count it towards eligibility for Title IV funds. We need to remove it from the enrollment status. If you have repeated the course because you have failed it multiple times and you've never successfully completed that course, we can continue to include it in the enrollment status, and you are eligible to receive Title IV funds for that course. Now, there are some exceptions that apply if your degree plan has a requirement for repetition of a particular course, and you see that quite frequently in programs like music or a dissertation for a doctorate. So there are some exceptions to that. That sums up repeated coursework. This is the third and way oversimplified slide in that I only put the reporting and disclosure. The Gainful Employment Act is multifaceted. It also passed in July 1st of 2011. The requirement for reporting was to submit information regarding any certificate program for the past 5 years of the number of individuals participating in the certificate, their loan debts, their graduation rates, their time to graduation, their completion rates. And I'm happy to report we submitted all 5 years timely, and all of them were submitted, and all of our edits were clear, and we did exactly what we needed to do. However, we now have an annual reporting requirement where we have to disclose, we have to report to the Department of Ed every fall for every certificate program. In addition to reporting, gainful employment requires that each academic program provide a disclosure statement that includes all of the information regarding the number of applicants, time to graduation, loan debt upon graduation, employment opportunities, average salaries. And that has also been successfully implemented. From here on out, what we're going to talk about are upcoming changes. These were passed just recently as part of the Budget Consolidation Act of 2012. These become effective July 1st of 2012 for the 2012-2013 award year. The Pell Grant Duration of Eligibility Act limits Pell Grant eligibility to the equivalent of 12 full-time semesters, which is confusing because you're like, how do you figure that out? But we don't. We're going to let the Department of Education figure that out through the NSLDS National Database reporting. It includes Pell Grants that students receive at any institution all across the country. When the Financial Aid Office awards a Pell and disperses a Pell, we report out to the national database what percentage of the Pell that student received from our institution. So by adding up all of the percentages that the student has received, the Department of Ed will be able to identify those who have hit their 600%, which is why I have a 600%. So the equivalent of 12 full-time semesters is not necessarily 144 credit hours, because it depends on the schools that you go to and how you calculate at each school what a full-time enrollment is. So that's why we're doing the percentages. This will be applicable to all Pell Grant recipients. That means that no Pell Grant recipient will be grandfathered in. There was a clause, because this is actually not a new regulation, it's just a modified regulation. There was a clause that excluded anyone who entered the Pell Grant program prior to 2008. But that was removed as a part of this act. So all Pell Grant recipients will be subjected to this. Now, and the downside is that we don't have full guidance on this yet. So it's effective fall of 2012. We're already processing it in the fall of 2012. The Department of Ed will not be notifying applicants until July of 2012.
That's cutting it close.
Yeah, just a little for us, because, well, for the student.
Right.
The students are going to have, we're going to do, we'll do what we need to do as far as blanket notification and the publications that we need on a university basis, but this is national. So nationally, the Department of Ed will be identifying and notifying those students separately from what the institutions are. We only have information that's applicable to our institution, so there would be no way that we can accurately identify every student who's affected, because we don't know what they did at their transfers.
I don't want to be pessimistic, but I can anticipate that you will have, you will be under a lot of pressure.
I don't see that as pessimistic. I think that's very realistic. But I think that there'll be a significant number of people affected. But the queries that we've run, I tried to do some estimate, and the numbers that we came up with, although are completely, I cannot quote because they're inaccurate, were not nearly the volume that I thought.
To clarify, before the change, they were eligible for 18. I'm over here. I'm over here, Mary.
You're everywhere.
The microphone works well now.
Yeah, that's right.
To clarify, before the change, they used to be eligible for 18 full semesters. Is that correct?
Well, exactly. However, that was applicable only to people who entered the Pell Grant program after 2008. So we weren't even close to counting our max yet. Follow? So what's going to happen is people are just not eligible. They're just not going to be eligible.
Right. Go ahead, sir.
So then before, it was eligible for 18 months for people before 2008. How much
18.
was it? How much was it before then? Before it was available for 18 months? I mean, I'm sorry, 18 full-time semesters? Was it
Correct.
12 full-time semesters before then? So they raised it and then lowered it again, or?
No, it was 18, they lowered it to 12. So when it was 18, they lowered it to 12. It was 18 plus grandfathering. So then they lowered it to 12 and took away the grandfathering.
Took away the what? I'm sorry.
Grandfathered?
Oh,
They were
grandfathered. I
grandfathered.
didn't hear you.
Yeah, that's okay. It's in New England.
The other question that I have is just the fact that just keeping track of 12 full-time semester.
Exactly. That's why the
Would be
Department of Ed.
Another major concern that would just give you some headaches, and if you don't have enough personnel to work with, that's another headache.
Right.
So my biggest concern has always been the timely fashion that you all, give the students their responses as far as, when they get on probation, when they get on suspension, how many are dealing with the 12 semester hours, and that the student doesn't get that information, and here he is trying to register.
Exactly.
And that's always been my biggest concern, not only here but in other institutions. But that's my biggest concern, that the student doesn't get the information on a timely basis, and it's not your fault.
No, you're correct.
In many cases.
Right.
But because you may not have enough personnel, or because you're not getting the right information or the timely information from the federal government or from any other agency. The other concern that I have has to do with the dropout of courses, or the dropping of courses. Several years ago, there was a law passed relating to dropout rates or dropout courses.
Right.
That you could not have more than 6 in your career.
Correct.
Is that still in play, or?
That is still in play, yes.
Okay, so that's another thing that you have to deal with also as
Yes,
well.
that's correct. And this will be a very large impact, but the Department of Education is not resting the burden of notification on the schools.
On you.
Right.
On us.
They will be identifying through their own methods those individuals they feel will be impacted by it, based on current.
But meanwhile, you always will get the blame, whether the federal government.
That's correct.
But you will get the blame.
That is correct.
And what goes out to the public is that you are to blame. So that's another concern that I always have about all this information that you're giving us.
Thank you very much, because we really appreciate that in the Financial Aid Office. And we tried to emphasize that these are not decisions that we are making within our own walls. These are directives that are legislated by the federal government, and in order for us to protect the interests of the schools, we need to enforce them cleanly and efficiently.
And the reason I say that is because I had 2 daughters that attended this institution, and they would bring back that kind of information to me. And but I couldn't do anything about it but to explain to them that
Right.
There's always somebody above somebody else, and there's the layers of bureaucracy in this and in everything else that's involved.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the impact. Move on. Ability to benefit. This is also a part of the Budget Consolidation Appropriations Act, effective for July 2012, for any student who is a first-time enrollee using the ability to benefit clause to qualify for Title IV funds. And that's the ability to benefit testing, and that is the successful completion of 6 credit hours at a school that's Title IV eligible. That's part of their degree program. So there are two criteria of how a student who does not have a valid high school diploma or its equivalent could qualify for Title IV eligibility using ability to benefit regulations. Those have been repealed. They've just been removed. This affects only those students who are first-time enrollees after July of 2012. Students who came into the programs under this particular legislative act continue to have eligibility, so those will not be affected negatively. We just won't be able to qualify Title IV funds for individuals on an ongoing basis. But again, as in all things, exceptions apply, homeschooled students, and a couple of other criteria. So it's a case by case. Direct lending. As far as direct lending, I picked, for the purposes of this presentation, I picked just those issues that would impact undergraduate students for fall of 2012. One is that there's a rebate on loan origination fees for all direct loans, subsidized and unsubsidized. That rebate has not been renewed, which means the students will not get that rebate on any loan that gets dispersed after July 1st. So if you're reading in the news about Stafford loans, direct loans, interest rates doubling, that's the cause, is that the rebate is no longer in existence. It's not that the interest rate went up, it's that the rebate is no longer being offered. Well, whatever, yeah, that's pretty much the cause. That's being debated. We're trying to get them to put the rebate back. We, being the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, are all lobbying in Washington because that's not done. They're actually discussing that now. And the second aspect is that there's an interest subsidy on a subsidized student loan for a 6-month grace period. So when the student drops below half-time status, they go into enter into a grace period. And during that grace period, traditionally, it's an interest-free grace period. They're not in repayment, but they don't have interest accumulating as yet. So they've repealed it. They've temporarily suspended the interest subsidy for any loan that will be dispersed between July 1st of 2012 and July 1st of 2014. So we'll see in 2014 if that continues or if they'll give us back that subsidy.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it pretty easy to get a loan, a student loan? I mean, what's the process?
Well, you'd have to be a student, Mr. Torres. I don't think you qualify.
Actually, it's a good question, because I had to go through that with my son, because he went to a private school, and I couldn't afford to pay all the tuition, and it's, it's easy and hard. I mean, for some, it's easy, and for others, it's a lot harder. You just have to shop around and see what, and I guess there's more available now. You've got the
yeah, we can go anyway. We can go anywhere you want with this particular question because it's so broad.
Well,
but a subsidized student loan and an unsubsidized student loan, both being the direct loan programs, do not require a credit check. So if you qualify financially for the loans, you can get the loan.
Yeah.
But you have to qualify for all Title IV eligibility. You can also go outside of those programs and research private loans, which would then all be credit-based, or if a parent loan would all be credit-based.
My question has to do with the institution and whether, when a student qualifies to apply for a loan, and I go back to David's son and my daughter, and she qualified to get a loan, and it was so easy that she pressed the wrong button on the computer, and she got a loan. And I said,
Wow.
I don't need a loan.
Wow,
I
that's
said, what are you
pretty
getting
cool.
this loan for? I says, I have to pay this eventually, right? But it was that
If it was a Parent Plus, you do. Yeah.
That's right.
So it was that easy for
Smart
her to
girl.
get a loan.
Well, she probably what her situation was that she accepted the loan after she had already processed it, and she just accepted it. And then that sent it off to be processed. So yes, it can be that easy once you
Yeah,
get
it
to
can
a
be
certain
very
point.
easy, and-
But let's not oversimplify. I mean, she had to go through a lot of steps to be able to have it available on that button.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But it was so easy, just to make a mistake and press on that button, and she
Right.
knew that she didn't need a loan.
Yeah,
So she
we don't
went-
make it that easy.
Okay. It's not that easy. Well, that was my concern. If it's too easy, then we have a problem.
No, we don't have that problem.
The dilemma is, I guess, if you don't qualify for the, what is it, Title IV, the income level is high enough,
Well,
but
see,
your
this is-
credit's not good, and then, those are the kids that fall in the cracks.
Right. Well, the subsidized student loan is need-based, so you have to qualify. The unsubsidized student loan is non-need-based, so you can get the unsubsidized student loan.
But,
But it's not very much. I mean, it's small amount.
And with the recession and the number of bankruptcies and other, people out of a job, there are a lot of kids that weren't able to qualify because their
That's
parents
right.
couldn't get the credit.
But,
That's right.
The reason I also asked that question about loans, because about 47% of the monies that we had to help students with Pell Grants and loans, et cetera, 47% of it was used up by loans, local, here, this institution. According to
pretty much.
Yeah.
We do a fairly high volume of loans.
So that's pretty accurate. Or more or less, ballpark, 47%.
I can't quote a number. I haven't
Renee
checked.
says yes.
Renee is saying yes. Renee said. Okay.
So I can't pass out my Sally Mae coupons or whatever.
That's it.
No.
And this is why I only picked 2 topics for loans, because we could probably do this all day. We don't want to oversimplify. We don't make it so easy that one button error could result in a
I want to
loan.
make it very difficult.
Yeah, well, not that difficult, but
But
not this is balance. It's all a balance.
You're speaking from the parental standpoint, right?
The easy part's getting them, the hard part's paying them back.
Okay, and on that note, our default rates. We don't, as you can see, and I get to learn that I learned this today. This is 2009, this is 2008. And this is the national average, and you can see that in 8, we were just below the national average, but for 2009, we increased exactly the same. And I haven't done any type of a comparative study on that other than to say that just has to be a national trend. As of today's discussion, we don't have 2010 available. And that concludes my presentation.
Mary, in regard to the default, these numbers here, default
Yes.
rates, are there any consequences to institutions?
Yes, there will be consequences to an institution if a default rate hits a certain point. We're not there. It currently is 25%. Penalties would then be imposed upon the institution, and there are certain criteria that need to be met in order for you to continue participation in the loan programs. We're not there yet.
Thank you.
One last question. Maybe you mentioned it during your presentation, but if a student gets on probation on the spring semester, can he get out of probation during the summer?
Yes, because we are now calculating at the conclusion of every payment period.
Okay,
So any work that you do in the summer will count. Yes,
that wasn't that wasn't before, right, Renee? Now they can.
correct. That's
Good.
part of the new.
That was always my concern, that, hey, why not get out of probation during the summer
Exactly.
and not wait until the fall?
Mr. Mendez?
One question, who's passing this information on to the students? Because I know a lot of the time students don't even know some of the criteria that
I'll
they,
tell you, we pass it on at every opportunity that we get presented to us.
is that on a one-on-one or is there some sort
It's
of
on
literature
one-on-one,
available?
it's in group, it's through AmeriCorps in the high schools, it's through email blasts, it's through any, orientations, come see us, give us a call, it's on our website, any way that we can convey it. A lot of times, students, it gets so complex that the student isn't always able to sort out how it applies to them specifically. So the best way to do that is one-on-one. So, and of course, the more one-on-one we have, the greater our staff needs to be. That's a plug. Thank you very much.
Mary, thank you very much. Thanks. And correct me if I'm wrong, is it Camerota? How do you pronounce your last name?
I pronounce it Camarada.
Camarada.
It's been, well, yeah.
Thank you, Mary Camarada. Item number 12, report on changes to the Perkins Center and Technical Education State Grant Program. I call on Mrs. Beatriz Castillo, Chair of Applied Business Technology Department, to present this item.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Tercero, and members of the board. I've been department chair for the Applied Business Technology for the last 3 years, and I've been teaching for TSC since 1984. When Dr. Ruth Ann Ragland called and asked if I would present her report to this board, being that I do have some knowledge in Carl Perkins, I said, of course I will. So this is her presentation. Where is my assistant here? Okay, here we go. Carl Perkins comes from the Carl Perkins Vocational and Technical Education Act, and this was authorized by the U.S. Congress in 1984. Now, although it is a federal funded grant, the coordinating board administrates this grant for all 2-year career technical education programs in the state of Texas. There have been changes in the funding formula, and the reason that I want to mention this at this point is because funding have decreased. Prior to 2008, notice that funding was based on all career technical education, which we refer to as CTE courses, taken by any Pell Grant recipient. And this included CTE students, academic and development students. After 2008, this is where the formula changed. Funding is now based on all CTE and academic courses taken by Pell Grant recipients who have a declared CTE major. Students taking developmental courses have been excluded from the funding formula. So in essence, before 2008, funding was based on contact hours. After 2008, it is based on declared CTE majors, career technical education majors. This slide shows how the funding formula has declined our annual allocations. And notice that in year 2005, 2006, we were granted an amount of $841,484. But if we jump to 2007, 2008, which is the changes for the formula took in effect, we went down to $638,510. And notice we started to decline. This year, 2011, 2012, we have gone down to $3,783. This has also affected the eligible students in the funding formula. And again, the reason for the decline in the eligible students is that we do not get funded for students in developmental courses, and the students need to have a signed degree plan, and the signed degree plan has to be in a career technical education program. And again, you see the eligibility of the students starting in 2006, 2007. We had 6,100 56 students that were eligible for this funding. And then if we go to 2007, 2008, we went down to 1,000, and we declined. And in 2011, 2012, we are at 1,711 students that we are helping through Carl Perkins. There are 2 direct services from Carl Perkins funding that assist our career technical education students in completing their degrees. And the 2 services are child care services and tutoring services. Now, the criteria for a student to receive benefits in child care are as following. They need to be Pell Grant recipients, full-time students. They need to have a declared career technical education major. They need to be enrolled in courses following their degree plan. They need to have a 2.0 GPA and a 70% completion rate. And you look at the cost, the number of students that we are servicing, and the children that are in daycare. The tutoring service is the other direct service that helps the students. And there are 2 benefits for the students in this service, is that the students receive tutoring and the tutors are paid through Carl Perkins, and the students are in the career technical education program within their program of study. So notice that in 2005, we started with 49 tutors. This year, or last year, should I say, 2010 to 2011, we had 45 tutors on campus helping the career technical students. Coordinating Board Workforce Education Program Inventory as of April 1st, 2011. They show 22 programs in the following departments. In the Allied Health Department, they show 5 programs, and they are listed here. In the Nursing Department, 2 programs. Applied Business Technology Department, 5 programs. Industrial Technology, 6 programs. And then the following programs, they each have 1 program. The number of associate degrees and certificates awarded are as following. Now, this is a combination of all the technical programs. Notice that in 2005, 2006, we awarded 559, and this is together associate and certificates. And last year, 2009 and 2010, we awarded 461 associate and certificates. Program completer placement rate. Now notice that the standard is 85% or above. So what you have here are the programs that have met the standard of 85% or better. The staff and Carl Perkins, like I said, Dr. Ruth Ann Ragland is a contact person, the administrator. Then we have Emilia Taylor, who is the administrator, analyst, advisor. Under child care services, we have Gerardo Guajardo, student development specialist. In the Office of Admission and Recruiting, we have Emilia Mancuso, student development specialist. User Support Services Department, Michael Lopez, computer user specialist. Industrial Technology Department, Sylvia Padron. And in the Applied Business Technology Department, we have Victor Flores, as an administrative clerk. And I'm going to end my presentation with 2 quotes that we received in spring of 2010 when coordinating board did their site visit. This coordinating board staff found the students to be proud of their programs and engaged in their classroom instruction. And they also said that we saw much interaction between the instructors and the students. Questions?
Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Dr. Cero?
Mrs. Castillo, if you can go back to the one on the placement rates. Oh, you have to. Well, that's okay.
I think I can do it best here on the computer.
There you go.
It's that one.
The computer placement
Yes,
rate? Okay, let me go.
Do you, my question is, this listing is only for those that are at 85% or above.
Correct.
Do you have the rest of the programs that are less than 85%?
We do have that, I just don't have it in the presentation, but this is something that we can get for you.
That would be
Stephanie.
really, I think, very important to see. Because those board members would be programs that we need to look at, because that means that they're not meeting the state standard. As part of our review process, which Dr. Owero and Chad and myself, actually all 3 of us are working on, I think that's something very important to point out, that there are programs out there that are not meeting the standard. Thank you, Mrs. Castillo.
Thank you, Dr. Cero. And thank you, Mrs. Castillo. Very informative. We appreciate it. Next item, report on the TSC Foundation annual meeting by TSC Board of Trustees Chairman. I will call on myself for the report. The Texas Southmost College Foundation was established as a nonprofit organization on February 23rd, 1984. In December 1987, Texas Southmost College received a challenge grant from the U.S. Department of Education's Developing Institutions Program. The grant challenged Texas Southmost College to raise $1 million in 18 months, and then they would match it with $2 million. By 1989, the goal was met, and Texas Southmost College raised the $1 million, and the Department of Education matched it with $2 million for the community to have $3 million for the TSC Foundation. According to its bylaws, the foundation meets annually for the purpose of electing directors and officers, approving the annual report of the corporation to be presented to the Board of Directors, to the Board of Trustees of Texas Southmost College Junior College District, and transacting any business as may come before the meeting. On that, I'd like to tell you, Dr. Cero, maybe we should ask for the chairman of the foundation to come and give us the annual report, because I don't think, according to their bylaws, they should be giving us a report. I don't think we received one last year.
Okay,
So,
I'll contact you.
given that the annual meeting of the TCA Foundation was held on December 9th, 2011, I wanted to share some of the highlights of this meeting. As reported in their annual fiscal report, the TSC Foundation, a nonprofit organization, had net assets of $5,751,803 as of August 31st, 2011. Based on the information presented at the meeting, the numbers of students receiving scholarships along with the amounts awarded has drastically changed from fiscal year 1995 to fiscal year 2011. The trend in numbers of awarded scholarships to students and the amount of funds awarded have been fewer scholarships and funds. For example, in fiscal year 1995, there were 848 recipients for the total of $151,268. In fiscal year 1999, the number had increased to 1,798 students and the amount of $512,912. By fiscal year 2012, there were only 135 scholarships for the total of $116,312. Of the 135 awarded, 33 were recipients of the new program established by the TSC Foundation titled the UTB TSC Challenge for Excellence Scholarship. In fiscal year 2012, year to date, 51 scholarships have been awarded totaling $102,000, and all have been under the new UTB TSC Challenge for Excellence Scholarship. I have the information for the other years, but what I wanted to point out is that there has been a trend in the numbers. The point is that there's diminishing awards and funding, and that's something important to point out. This is especially so in viewing the pending separation of the college and the university into two freely standing accredited higher education institutions. Clearly, each institution should be supported by its own separate foundations. Happily, Texas Southmost College has its foundation since 1984. Its articles of incorporation are very clear about the purpose of the foundation being for the support of the college and those it serves. The foundation should continue to operate in keeping with its original legal purpose through the period of the transition towards separation and after the separation for the exclusive support of Texas Southmost College. As a member of the foundation board, I have become aware that an effort to provide foundation support for UT Brownsville. The university deserves and needs much such support, especially when it becomes a freestanding higher education institution separate from Texas Southmost College. However, no action or activity by the current TSC Foundation Board or by any individual Foundation Board member may be in contravention of the stated purpose of the Foundation. To do so would give rise to breach of fiduciary duties claimed by the Foundation and perhaps by TSC as the intended beneficiary of the Foundation. Finally, the amended and restated bylaws of the Texas Southmost College Foundation speak to the number, tenure, and qualifications of the Board of Directors. It provides, in part, that the qualifying positions of the Board of Directors is the current Chief Executive Officer of Texas Southmost College. That person is Dr. Lily Tercero. So I shall request that the Chair of the Foundation, Reverend Monsignor Herbert Diaz, to confirm Dr. Tercero's appointment to her position on the Foundation Board. Dr. Tercero's leadership and expertise will guide the Foundation and those who serve on the board in keeping with the stated purpose of the Foundation. In closing, I would like to thank all of the TSC Foundation members for their service supporting and enhancing the role of the mission of Texas Southmost College.
You've said that there's been a trend downward in the amount of monies that are being awarded and the amount of scholarships that are being given out. But what's happening to the fund balance? Is the TSC Foundation, does it exist to actually raise funds to continue the fund balance and continue giving scholarships? Do you see that that's actually being done? Is there money that's coming into the pot also?
That is one of the stated missions of the foundation, but lately I don't think there's been very much growth. The majority and the bulk of the money was raised before, I guess in 1989 when we had the $1 million, and then that was matched, and there's been interest throughout the years, and some money has been paid out and some has come in, but the bulk of it was raised back then.
I think it's important to note that they are a separate foundation. They're not governed or controlled by this board, and they have their own board, and they elect their own board, and they appoint their own members. So I think it would be helpful probably to get Father Burt to come to the next meeting, and I think also there'll be we should invite other foundation board members. I'm on the foundation board. I wasn't at the December meeting, but was actually with my son in the hospital in Austin, because I know I wanted to be there, but I think that it would be useful to hear from them, and also that to remember also that they're their own board. They can make their own bylaws. They can amend their bylaws. They can change their stated purpose, I think, if they want to. So I don't know that we can sit here and dictate to them what they can and can't do.
Is that kind of like the UTB Development Board, the same thing? Is UTB Development Board part of UTB, or is it separate?
I don't know how the UTB Development Board is chartered or how it's set up, but I know this foundation board is totally set. It's a nonprofit organization that's set up just as, I mean, I think you've read recently about I guess, some of the scandals at UT Law School because they have a separate foundation board. And what they found out is basically they have, they're their own boards and they have the ability to award the money as however they choose and to amend the bylaws however they choose. The board does. So.
The original physical agent in 1984 was who?
Texas Southmost College.
Texas Southmost College. And David was right, they're an independent board, and we're not here to dictate what they should or should not do. But I think that, first of all, I want to thank the board for the work that they've done and for the many efforts they've made to provide scholarship monies for our students. In the spirit of cooperation, wouldn't it be wonderful if the UTB Foundation board and its $7.3 million would also come in this direction so they can help Texas Southmost College students as well. And I think that the TSC Board Foundation, the UTB Foundation, can find some common ground, that we can cooperate with each other and help each other in this case, instead of going in separate directions. But I think that the best thing to do is, one, to continue to discuss this, and then if we can find some common ground in where TSC Foundation monies and UTB Foundation monies can be used in both directions. So this agreement can be mutual, and that would be the ideal and the most wonderful thing that can happen.
I guess just to clarify, you're making reference to the UTB endowment funds that total $7.3 million.
Right.
I see. Now,
Thank you.
Is there a UTB Foundation? Is there a UTB Foundation?
Not that I'm aware of.
They have endowed scholarships and endowment funds.
They have several, I think, scholarships.
Yeah.
Okay. But I agree with Mr. Oliveira that the foundation was formed separately from the college and has its own board. But the central mission that was stated for it was for the central purpose of the corporation is to support and enhance the role and mission of Texas Southmost College, a two-year public junior college located in Brownsville, Texas. But like Mr. Oliveira said, the board decides to change the bylaws. It's a different issue. But then it poses a different question. If a donor donated to Texas Southmost College and the college deposited that money into the foundation, where would that put us? Because, for example, I've got an example. In 1995, there was a will and testament where the money's basically in the testament says they want to give the money to Texas Southmost College, Brownsville, Texas, the sum of $20,000. And that money was directed to the foundation. So then how would that work? Do you have an opinion on that, David?
First of all, I wasn't around when that made. I haven't seen the instrument you're talking about, but certainly, I mean, the monies that were contributed, to this endowed fund are separate monies and they belong to that foundation board. I don't know anything about money being transferred over, and why it didn't go into TSC Dental. I don't know anything about that particular gift you're talking about. Who is it from?
It's from Martha Ellis.
Martha Ellis?
Not the Martha, no, not the Martha Ellis you're thinking about.
Wow, that's nice of her to leave us.
She's alive and well.
She's still alive, right?
Yes, this is a Martha Ellis that left it in her estate to us. Because then there's other funds that went to the foundation that were grants that were requested on behalf of Texas Southmost College. And then those funds go to the foundation, and then it raises a legal question on how do you handle that? Because it was...
Well, I could tell you that, having sat through a committee meeting, that the intention is that this money go certainly to help all students in the Brownsville area. And so if you want to sit and pick apart, there was some money that was dedicated only to TSC. Well, certainly I would think that the foundation board is going to make sure that money gets divided pretty evenly. And so at the end of the day, if they decide to split it up between TSC students, UTB students, both will profit. I mean, not profit. Both will benefit from those gifts, and both will do well. So,
Well-
I mean, I know your intent is solely to go to Texas Southmost
Yes.
College, and I don't think, Mr. Chairman, I heard that when you made that presentation, it didn't go over very well to the board, and I don't think you had one vote. So I think the intent of the board is for the whole community to share in it.
Well,
Since
yeah.
the whole community gave to it, okay?
I agree with you because that board has a different focus now, but, I was elected to be a trustee of Texas Southmost College, and I serve on that board on behalf of Texas Southmost College. And, to change the scholarship and make it an academic merit scholarship pretty much eliminates all of our Texas Southmost College students. We've got lots of students who are in remedial classes, and they're the ones that need most help. The presentations we just saw, Carl Perkins is giving less money. We're getting less money for the technical programs. We're getting less money all around. So this is at the time that TSC needs it the most. And,
Well, I think you're welcome to raise that and point that out to the foundation board.
And historically, I can give you some numbers, on the recipients. They used to be in the thousands, and there used to be Texas Southmost College students. And then this year, there's 51 of them. And the majority of those students aren't eligible because they're Texas Southmost College students, and it's merit-based. So it raises an issue, but just because the board has the votes doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it morally correct. If
I know
the foundation-
exactly how you feel.
So, I guess it's something we need to look at and discuss in the future, because if someone made a donation to Texas Southmost College and it was given to the foundation, because that's the purpose of the foundation, and now it's going to be going in a different direction, the university, yes, they need their support too, but they've benefited a lot. They've grown from zero endowments to $7.3 million in the last 20 years. So they've benefited from this great partnership, and we've stayed stagnant. It's been the same funds we had from the beginning, with a few donations, but nothing of major significance. They went from zero to $7.3 million, and we're at 5.7 when we started the race with close to $4 million 20 years ago. Anyway, that's my comment on that. Anybody have any questions? Moving forward, we have a report of first quarter financial statements and investments of fiscal year 2012. I call on Mr. Chet Lewis, Vice President of Administration and Finance, to present this item.
Chairman Rendon and members of the Board of Trustees, every year we present our quarterly financial statements and our investment reports to you. This is an information item. It doesn't require any action, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have on the report.
Well, I looked at it, Chet, and obviously looks like a different language to me, but I went and the most important thing I looked at was the bottom line, so it looks like we had some investment income. If you can just sum that up, it was like, what, $16,000 or something like that?
There's a little over $15,000, and most of the earnings were in restricted funds. I think the largest area that had any earnings, that has one of the largest balances, was related to the balance we have with the rec center, and that's all restricted to that purpose.
So there's no action necessary on this? Are there any further questions? No further questions? Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Item number 15, report on TSC transition team. I call on Dr. Leonardo de la Garza, TSC consultant, to give the report. Dr. de la Garza.
Chairman Rendon, members of the board, it's good to be before you again. I think it was November last time that we had the privilege. Thank you for the opportunity. The report is on the transition team activities. The board chose to appoint some of us to the transition team, and we do need to provide the board periodic reports on those activities. I've broken down the presentation into three major areas. I know that I'm the person and time that stands between you and your wonderful executive session that you're looking forward to, so I'll try to be a bit brief, but I'll certainly take any questions that you have either during or after the information sharing. The first is the discussion of the semi-annual report on the status of the partnership to the legislature. As you well know, this report is required by Senate Bill 1909 of the 82nd Legislature, that's the legislature, where the partnership, that is the UTB TSC partnership, provides a report to the legislature on progress toward final separation. That final draft report was actually finished this afternoon. I understand that Dr. Tessetta will be providing a copy of that report to the board, probably in the 1 or 2 day time frame. That report also includes the current membership of the transition team, which will be there for you to review. Basically, the report summarizes the more important activities by the UTB TSC partnership as it moves toward final separation and of the University and the college on or before August of 2015. 3 key areas. First, the challenges in the continuation of the partnership. That part of the report covers about 4 areas. I'm going to be sort of brief, but it includes a review of all lower division program offerings and individual programs by the staff of the college. It includes the initial work on developing an academic master plan for the college's work on offering courses once it takes an operational control of those activities. Thirdly, it has information on developing the financial projections for the institutions. This has been a bear in terms of making those projections, primarily because, as you know, the partnership has reported, as it should and will continue to report, the numbers of students as one group, with some segregation in terms of lower division and upper division. But it's not that clear in terms of how that should be done. And so the partners have pretty much decided that the report to the legislature and the request should be one of production by the college in terms of its lower division offerings, and the university as part of its lower division offerings and the upper division offerings as well. As you know, universities are funded differently from community colleges, and so it makes the reporting just that much more a little bit arduous. But there is an ongoing working relationship and partnership, just like the words in the transition, between the university system and the university here on campus and the college in putting this together. Finally, the report includes some personnel employment projections and decisions. You probably have read some of that in the local paper, where the university, as colleges and universities have, policies that provide for notice to be given to contract employees, and in particular, in most cases, specifically faculty, about the intention of the institution to continue their employment. Here's a period of transition that is upon the university and the college, where the college will, at some point, take over some of the instructional programs, certainly the lower division, freshman and sophomore. Deciding which ones those will be is certainly an issue. Deciding how much of a program it'll entail, both in the career programs as well as the general academic lower division offerings, is another. And so it's not clear cut as how you'd identify these groupings. But the university system in particular and the college are working on trying to meet those deadlines so that the university can give notice to any employees on campus who will not be offered employment beyond a certain day in the fall. That's an ongoing effort. Now, the other 2 areas, primary areas that this report on the status of the partnership to the legislature includes is the process for securing freestanding accreditation for both UTB and TSC. I will belabor that because I will provide a part of the report to you on that on the transition team activity, so I will touch on that here momentarily. But in terms of the third area of the transition team activities being reported to the legislature is securing state funding for both institutions in the upcoming legislative session. We touched briefly on that process. Now, back to the transition team activities report. The second portion of that is the update on the college's accreditation process. As you well know, accreditation is a function that's under the purview and jurisdiction of something called the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. SACS is one of several regional accrediting organizations throughout the nation, and it happens to serve the needs of 14 states, from Texas to Virginia, in the southeastern portion of the United States. And so that is the accrediting organization for this institution. SACS accredits all school, university, public, private institutions in the 14 states. And so that organization is has been and the folks who are really good to work with. I should tell you that I had the privilege of serving 2 3-year terms in recent years on the Commission on Colleges. Happily, basically the same people who were on board then are on board now on the staff of SACS, so it makes it a little easy to work with these people. Dr. Agüero had a similar opportunity in serving 2 terms on the SACS Commission on Colleges. Now, you remember back in November that I made a comment about the need, most probably for UTB and TSC to, and I use the metaphor of the yellow brick road, to walk down the yellow brick road hand in hand in terms of ensuring that both institutions achieve full accreditation as freestanding institutions at the end of this transitionary process for the separation of the partnership. It was true then, it's true now, and it'll be true through the years to come, the next 2 or 3 years, because it's going to take that long to get to the end of that yellow brick road. It's not going to happen next year or the year after. Let me explain. The process and timeline are prescribed and controlled by SACS, not by the institutions, or not by the wishes of any of us. It is clear to me that university officials and certainly college officials would like for it to be a shorter time frame. Well, that would be nice, but there's an old saying in Espanol, uno se opone y Dios dispone. In this case, I guess the SACS is Dios. They decide when it is that you go through the process. Now, all of that is the process and the timeline, is going to be finalized this spring. In fact, in the April timeframe. I know that Dr. Cicero and Dr. Agüero are both registered to attend a special training session provided by SACS, at which time all of this will be discussed, and the process and the timelines will be pretty much agreed to, and then you will know. But I can tell you that it's going to take a time frame of the 2014, most probably the original 2015 time frame that was prescribed in a letter that was sent by SACS to the UT system and the university here, and then later shared with the college. So you're looking at 2015. What happens between now and then? Well, the accreditation of the university and the college as UTB TSC continues. It's confusing, certainly at best, because while there's an accreditation designation for the institutions that are part of the partnership, it is to the partnership, UTB TSC. Okay? Now, when the processes and timeline are finalized in a couple of months, surely it'll be important to return, perhaps Dr. Cassetto, Dr. Agüero, or myself, and inform you about how exactly that has been determined and give you all the steps and so forth, which will be kind of easy to follow on a calendar. And I think that ought to be done. However, I think it's important, given the confusion about what I just described, and it is confusing, there should not be any question or any doubt in anyone's mind. The college, Texas Southmost College, will be fully accredited as a freestanding institution at the end of this process. There's no doubt. There should not be any doubt. And so it's just going to take time. It's going to take patience, and it takes understanding why it is that you have to go through that process and prove to the accreditation agency, not necessarily the accredited agency, but to your peers who are members of a commission of colleges and who pass on your accreditation, that you may and should be fully accredited. So that's the information on the accreditation process. Succinct, but certainly I will stand for questions. The third area of the transition team activities I want to present to you is a very important effort that's ongoing on campus, and it has to do with a full review of campus facilities and infrastructure. Why do this? Well, the college is going to prepare and continue to prepare to take responsibility for its instructional programs. I'll remind you that the entity on campus that has been doing all of this has not been the college. It's been the university through contract with the college. By comparison, the university has somewhere around 2,400 employees. The university has the college has less than 20. And so as you prepare to decide what it is that you're going to do, what it is that you're going to offer, in what buildings, with what support elements, with what infrastructure, you have to do a full analysis. There have been teams on campus doing that with the full cooperation of the UTB personnel in charge of those areas. In fact, Howard Porteous, Howard is here. He's one of the members of the team who's been going through tunnels and computer infrastructure and such as that, doing and conducting the review and providing the president a report, which surely will be available to report to the board relatively soon. In addition to that ongoing activity, there is a need to ensure that the college will have its ability to be supported with information technology. The IT support system on campus will be reviewed. In fact, there is a request for proposal or qualifications that's being generated out of Chet's office that'll go out for people to consider and to bid for consultative services and other services that may be related to making sure that the college has or obtains and will have in place the information technology to support its instructional programs and support programs. Everything from administrative to student development services to the financial aid components, registration, and the instructional effort of the college. And so that is a must. And the sooner you get that done, the better you're going to be, because it dovetails with the review of the infrastructure of the buildings to decide what you're going to offer, where, and how much space you have to conduct your program offerings. And so those are the areas that I wanted to report to you tonight, and certainly we'll be glad to answer any questions. I know it went rather fast and furious. This report entails hundreds and hundreds of hours on the part work of the president and her staff, as well as UT system individuals and UTV individuals. The meetings of the transition team are held alternately in Austin and in Brownsville. There was one which we attended in Austin in January. The last one was held here on campus a week ago, Monday. And so it's an ongoing process. I can tell you that it's a process that's going to work. It's challenging at best, but it is going to work. Let me stop there and answer any questions you may have.
Dr. Mendoza, you stated that it looks as though the accreditation may be trending somewhere, maybe 2014, something like that. That means that the institutions won't be able to have their own separate classes until that time. Is that right?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Certainly, the college and one of the key elements of the need for accreditation is for students to receive financial aid. Students may not receive financial aid at an institution that's not accredited. Your programs are not approved by the funding agency. That's the arm of the legislature that distributes funding from the state. That's the coordinating board, unless you're an accredited institution, and on and on. But the fact is, any effort by the college prior to that, and there is work currently ongoing, as I'm sure Dr. Tercero and Dr. Agüero can tell you, of having operational responsibility for some programs as early as the fall of 2013. That can be done under the auspices of the accreditation of the partnership, UTB TSC, because that accreditation remains intact.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, because my follow-up question to that was going to be if UTB plans on laying off some employees or giving some employees notice of that termination, I was wondering why it was going to be within the next few months to only give them a year if UTB is still presumably having the benefit of the TSC transfer of $50 million or in excess of that yearly. If they're still going to have the benefit of that money, what is the rationale in laying off some employees if TSC is not going to have the benefit of those funds?
That has to do, Mr. Owens, primarily with the university giving notice to faculty, and in this case tenured faculty, and a certain portion of the tenured faculty. It all goes back to the initial agreement between the institutions in terms of if and when there should be a termination of the partnership, what type of employees the college would rehire. So all of that is in place. But the fact of the matter is, what you're talking about here is contract employees and primarily faculty. Now, if the college decides, and this is one of the challenges that I very quickly identified in terms of the report to the legislature, if the college decides that it is going to manage and operate program A through N, then it will and should notify the university of its intent to operate those programs, let's say fall of 2013, which is the first year of the new funding cycle by the legislature. Legislature decides who gets funded in January through May of 2013. And so if that works the way it could and should, then the university will be in a position to give notice to those employees based on the notice that the college gives the university system of its intent to take over those programs. Now, there's one element that is still to be considered, and that is Dr. Tercero alluded, for example, to program evaluation in her questions of one of the presenters tonight. Let me give you a possible scenario. It does happen. Let's say that you have a program which has been identified as a low-performing or non-to-be-funded program by the state, and it's one that's to be considered. Clearly, the college president needs to decide whether the college should continue with that program for various reasons, and I can tell you that the staff are identifying various reasons to agree or not agree that a program ought to be in place, such as need for the community, a health and nursing program, for example, that may be needed. And I only pick those out of the air. These are certainly not programs that would fall into that category. But the college would make that decision in terms of those programs, but it still has and should do its program review, evaluation of the program, or the worthiness of the program. The college may want, and you may want, to bring other programs that are needed in the community, that maybe we're going to hire many more graduates of the program than the one that you have currently. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. And so you just, you do the evaluation, you decide or not whether you're going to keep the program or not. You notify the university. They in turn can notify faculty if in fact those faculty fall within the category identified in the original partnership agreement.
So then in theory, if TSC then is providing some instruction and the like, then some of those funds that are being transferred over would be held back? Is that what would happen?
Well, the funding is challenging, as we sort of indicated earlier. But if the college and the university can produce a funding report and request to the legislature, to the legislative budget board, based on production, and they're currently working on that. That means how many contact hours for the college, how many semester credit hours for the university, can you reasonably and factually ask for funding for the next biennium, then you take that to the legislature. But it's not that easy because those programs have not been segregated in the past for reporting purposes.
If I may add here, Mr. Mendez, a lot of the work that we'll be doing over the next couple of months, we'll be working on looking at what we will be able to bring forth in the fall of 2013. That means that will include having to look at the agreements. That means it means that we'll be looking at the dollars. That's what you're,
Yeah,
that's what you're
obviously,
saying. And
because
yes, we will need to make some dollars that have been going toward UTB, TSC, will need to be looked at and reallocated very likely to the piece that will be operated under the auspices of TSC.
Perfect. That was what I was trying to. Okay.
While we go under this umbrella of still being accredited as UTB, TSC, and they know that, and we're working on that. So yes.
That was my concern. So thank you.
Dr. Lozano.
Dr. Delegaza, thank you very much for your hard work on this enormous task. And my question was more of a visceral question is, are you satisfied with the progress that the transition committee is making?
Yes. Yes. There are challenges. There will continue to be challenges. Challenges, as we all know, are mostly in communication and communicating the right information at the right time. And understanding what's being said or asked. But yes, my answer to you is yes. The team that Dr. Tercero has put together, the transition team for the college, and I don't include myself in that, but honestly, these people are really, really great. The UT system has had some changes to their transition team. I will just speak to a couple of them, maybe one, the person who is chairing the transition team now and the meetings of the transition team, Dr. Reyes, is a fantastic individual. He knows the region, he knows the needs here, both in terms of the universal service and the college service. So I think that's good. So yes, I'm pleased.
Well, Dr. De La Garza, I'll include you on the team. It's a fantastic team, and I thank you for being on it. You have a lot of expertise, and we appreciate having you on the team.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Mr. Torres?
No, just
Dr. Lozano?
Can I ask Chet to come back? I had one quick question on the
Sure.
financial statement. Before we
Thank you, Dr. De La Garza. Thank you. I'm calling Mr. Lewis to look at one of the items he presented.
Yeah, Chet, I just had one quick question. Can you help me understand on under tab 7 of your financial report, page 2? Looks like page 2. And just, it's my old eyes trying to pick out these things without lines, you know. Under expenses, operating expenses, institutional support, Board of Trustees, we spent, what, $6,700, something like,
Yes.
am I reading that correctly? What did we spend it on? Just curious. What are
There's
the
probably,
Board of Trustees expenses?
I believe some of the meals for the meetings are here, and then just some minor postage or some of the, I think that some of the travel also would be recorded there. If one of the board members went to a meeting, for example, I think we've had some people go to the TACC or on some of the other meetings that have happened that relate to the community college. And so whenever there's an expense that's related to one of the trustees, it would be charged there also.
I'm sorry.
And also the putting on the meeting here, as far as the cost, some of the media services, that's also charged to that line item.
And I'm sorry, what trustees are traveling where? I hadn't heard anything about that. I mean, are trustees traveling to Austin, to Washington, to where?
I don't think we've had anybody to Washington.
Okay.
I don't have the meetings in front of me, but I believe we've...
The board members that have attended sessions were relating to the Texas Association of Community Colleges Conference, the conference of the Texas Association of Trustees.
Texas Association of
Those
Community
usually
College
held in
Trustees.
Austin, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And the other thing, too, interestingly,
Nobody's going to Orlando, though,
But
right?
I believe that, no, I believe that one was in Dallas,
We still
actually.
got 236.
there was, well, one of them was in Dallas, Mr. Oliveira.
The last one?
Yeah, I
That
just-
one was in
That's that
Dallas.
association one, you know, in 11 was in Dallas.
Yeah, and the, interestingly that I found is that every time we post our agenda at the county courthouse where we have to post it, we have to pay $6. I never had seen that before. That was very interesting. When I came- No, or Tarrant. That was never done
That's
anywhere I've been.
It's a Cameron County
So
issue?
it's a Cameron County. Yeah.
So you see that it ends at 6,716. That six, one of the sixes is one of the postings.
All right. No, maybe just to bring a little breakdown. I'd like to get just understand that.
So
No,
you
next
want
time
to
just-
break down of that
Yeah,
amount?
if you wouldn't mind.
We'll get that to you.
Great.
We're going to have to bring our own sack lunches next time.
Well, we almost do. That's my point.
Now we'll convene to executive session. The board will now convene to executive session as provided by Government Code Chapter 551.072. We now reconvene from executive session. Action on executive session matters. The matter was deliberation of real estate property regarding the TSC Fort Brown condos, villas. It's not 1 and 2. It was, which villas are we? Villas 1. At this point, do we have a recommendation? I call Mr. Lewis to the podium, please. Could you explain the offer to us, what we have available right now?
At a previous meeting, the board had accepted one sale of one of the condos, and so there's an offer out for the remaining 21 condos, and we have agreed upon a price of $32,500 for all the condos as one package purchase deal.
So that's the final offer that we have? Okay.
That's the offer we have with them, yes. And at this time, we think that it's a recommendation of the staff that we move forward and recommend to the board that you move forward with this purchase. There's been, as we previously discussed, there's been budgetary issues related to the operation of the condos. It takes a lot of time, management, and also, in an individual year, we're losing $40,000, 50,000 based on the amount of expenses we're paying for the homeowners association and on the upkeep and the additional personnel that we have managing this. And in some of the years, it's even been more than that, although some of them have been through because of renovations.
Do we pay ourselves taxes on these?
No, we don't, but one of the good things is by putting these back out on the market, these will now be subject to property taxes, and we will be benefiting from those through property tax revenues in the future.
So I guess the motion, we're looking for a motion to accept the offer on the 21 units for a total cost of $682,500. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Torres. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mendez. Do we have any discussion?
Mr. Lucioso, do you feel that the property market in Brownsville has been fairly depressed lately, too?
I think there's been a number of things that we've seen in the media, and also there's been issues with people being able to get loans that has been affecting the ability and the pricing of homes. There has been some turnaround, but I think overall, the market isn't what it was a couple of years ago, and I think that this is a fair deal considering the fact that someone's buying 21 at the same time. And I think when we had originally purchased these, they were done on an individual basis. So the one we accepted was a little bit more money, but at the same time, because of the fact that someone's buying 21, I think it would the discount is appropriate.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I just want to state also that it's not our core mission to be landlords of condos. So we have a motion by Mr. Torres and a second by Mr. Mendez to approve the sale of the 21 units for $682,500. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. Next item, proposed meeting dates are scheduled for the following: Thursday, March 22nd, 2012, Thursday, April 19th, 2012, and Thursday, May 17th, 2012. I would like a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Torres.
Second.
Second by Dr. Lozano. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you.